This is Brad A. Milford with the Unlimited Business Wisdom Podcast, where leaders, seasoned entrepreneurs, and business owners share their wisdom. It's straight to the point to respect people's time, and because we know knowledge and wisdom turn to business possibility, and possibility mixed with support and action become reality. In this podcast, we discuss leadership, sales, marketing, operations, team development, quality, and finance to drive sustainable results and everlasting impact to make the world a better place. Thanks for joining us. Enough of that, as I like to say. Let's get to our special guest. In a few sentences, Brian, share with us who you are and what you do.
Great. Well, what I do now is I host a radio show, a live internet radio show called Success Profiles Radio. It's over 10 years old now. I also publish a companion magazine, which is called Success Profiles Magazine. That's over 4 years old. And the newest issue is set to come out in the next week or so. And I also help people write their books, whether it's coaching or whether it's ghostwriting. So basically, my overarching mission is to help people get their message out to the world in a bigger way so that people know who they are, what they do, and how they serve the world.
Love that. And that just rolled right off the tongue. Mm-hmm. Well said. I love it. And I say that jokingly, sort of, but with all sincerity to highlight, literally, that really did roll right off the tongue. I can tell that you have been doing this for a while, 10 years, 4 years, but I imagine you've been at this for a lot longer.
Yeah, not my first rodeo.
Exactly. Not my first rodeo.
Yeah.
That's great. I love it. And all really noble missions. Us speakers, trainers, coaches, those of us in the corporate world that want to spread our wings a little bit, that's all really needed in the market, really underserved market, I might say. So awesome. Question number 2, Brian.
Yes.
This is a fun one. What's the best thing about being in business?
Time freedom. I can do what I want, when I want, with who I want, however I need to do it. If I have to run a special errand in the middle of the day, I can do that and not be answerable to anyone, except if I have an appointment, in which case I can usually ask if I can reschedule because this. So I'm not beholden to punching a clock. I can take lunch when I want to. I can work on whatever projects I want to, when I want to. I can work in the morning, I can work in the afternoon, I can work at night, or I can just not work at all that day. But knowing that I have projects on my plate that have to get done by a certain time, I can just plan when I want, because I know myself well enough that I am most productive in the morning, and I'm maybe a little less productive in the evening. And so there are certain types of projects that I might work on in the evening that might not require quite as much brain power, like editing, for example, versus writing. So you get to know yourself pretty well. So I love having time freedom. And when you have time freedom, you are working on the things that you want to do, to work with. And I'll tell you what, when my dad passed away in February last year, I was able to take that time and go be with my mom for over a month. Now, I did some work because I had to, but I was able to be available. If mom said, Brian, I need you. Yes, mom. That was always the priority. Yes, I can. So if I would have had a job, there's no way I could have taken 4.5 weeks off. I would have been allowed maybe 5, and then I would have had to go back to work. I would have been fired because I'm not leaving my mom in that time.
I love how you illustrated that. So we've heard a lot of times of freedom, right? So a lot of us are in business because of freedom. It's great. But I love how you framed up time freedom and then gave examples as well. I want to share with you what you shared speaks to me personally, because I went through that 2 years ago with my brother. And so I totally understand, and my heart goes out to you, having to walk through that. But it is really a beautiful thing. So the way you frame that is, hey, look, I had the freedom to do what many people can't, or don't have the freedom to be able to do. And I love what you said about, having the ability to do what you want whenever you want. What I heard in what you said that was really interesting to me, in the way you framed it, it's not just about time, but I heard priorities. So the way you explained it is like, I get to set my priorities based on who I've learned I am as a person and how I work best. And to me, that's a powerful statement.
Absolutely. And if I can share this, I think sometimes as a writer, as someone who creates content regularly, you look for content within the realm of your own experiences. And so when my dad passed, I knew I wanted to write a book honoring the lessons that I learned from him. I wasn't ready right away. I had to process and heal and all that. 6 months after it happened, I was finally ready to at least think about the idea. So I pitched a proposal to my Facebook group, Authorpreneur Live, and said, hey, I want to do a book about the greatest lessons I learned from my dad. If you would like to chip in a little bit and present short chapters, and we can just all do this book together. And I had 28 people say yes. And so it was very therapeutic. So when you have a mess that you can turn into a message, you can help a lot of people with that. So the resulting book was this. It's called The Greatest Lessons I Learned from My Dad. It's on Amazon. It came out in December. And it did really well. And several people in this book said, I'm so glad you did this because I needed this to heal with my dad. And some people presented this to their dad, and it was just an overwhelming expression of joy. So this is on Amazon. I'm working on the mom book right now, The Greatest Lessons I Learned from My Mom. My mom is still with me. That book is scheduled to come out in April. I want it to come out before Mother's Day. And there will be 3 volumes of another book called The Greatest Lessons I Learned from Being an Entrepreneur. There have been so much interest that there will be enough content for potentially 3 books. So that's happening in July. So cranking out content all the time and helping people share their message is a huge mission of mine. And I love what I do. I really do.
I love this conversation. And I love the way you're illustrating this as well. This is great. Mm-hmm. Really appreciate it, Brian. And thanks for sharing your personal story as well. So powerful.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Question number 3.
Yes.
This is fun. This is my favorite question. We hear from other business owners, they're getting so much business that sometimes the chaos causes some overwhelm. Would you be willing to share your thoughts about that, Brian?
Absolutely. Well, one thing I do is I figure out when is everything due, because sometimes I tend to operate under the idea of what's due first, or in full transparency, who screams the loudest about when my stuff is going to be done. So sometimes you have to manage your schedule according to who the greasy wheel is, and that's fine. That's fine. I think also there's a point at which you decide you actually need help and you need to source things out. There are some things that you should not be doing in your business. I am not a graphic designer. So I have a VA. I hired a VA in June last year. She's been with me for 9 months now. And so she's been laying out and formatting my clients' books for me and designing book covers. And so that's great. Now that I have some of these projects coming up soon, I'm probably going to need to either add a second person, or I'm just going to have to source out projects, just individual projects. And then if I end up having to do too much of that, then I might consider hiring someone full-time to do some of that stuff, because ultimately it might be less expensive for me to have someone at my beck and call all the time. So I'm going to assess that, but that's the fun of being an entrepreneur and growing an actual business. There's a difference between creating your own job and creating a business. And I'm in that transition now where I actually have a business, because now I have someone that I'm responsible for in terms of making sure they get paid, making sure their family's taken care of, and making sure that she has enough to do. Some days that's a challenge. But I told her this morning, I have another fun project that she's going to really enjoy doing. I'm going to have a video created. I need to create the audio for that so that she can set pictures and music to the audio. And I said, I need this probably by Thursday. So I need to create this content for you today. So that's my agenda for this afternoon, is to create that for her to work on.
I love that. I love how you shared so powerful stuff about scaling up and how we do that and sourcing. But I also love how you tapped into the fact that, when we build a real business, as you said, right, as we build a real business, we're taking care of other people and their families too. And that's so important. And I think sometimes people get caught up, forced to the tree statement, right? And they don't realize that. So I love how you framed that up.
Yeah. And in one of Robert Kiyosaki's books, he talked about, I think it was Retire Rich, Young, Retire Rich. He said if 3 million people started a business and they each hired 3 people, that would solve a lot of problems.
100% with you. We love this conversation. That's great. Thank you so much for sharing.
You're welcome.
Question number 4. What other successful business owners like yourself should be on the Unlimited Wisdom podcast?
Well, Chris Whitehead is my business coach. I'm sure you've probably already had him on, but he's brilliant. And I just love everything that he's doing. And I love who he is. He's my coach, and my business has grown exponentially since hiring him. And you can't go wrong having someone like him on your show.
I love it. He has been on. I mean, it hasn't been released, so I totally understand why you would know that. But he has been on. I think it releases next week, and he's tremendous, and I love that you gave him a shout out.
Yeah,
and we'll let him know you did so as well.
Okay.
And Chris is sharp.
Good.
So for those of you watching and listening, if you haven't listened to his podcast, I recommend that you do that, as well as share this one with Brian out as well. All right, Brian, thanks so much for sharing. I appreciate you.
Mm-hmm.
What piece of wisdom would you share from your perspective with other business owners?
Start sooner. Start before you're ready. Because if you think about the story of Moses, the Red Sea did not part in front of him until he put his foot in the water. Sometimes we wait for the Red Sea to part first as the sign, but sometimes you just have to commit to a direction and let the universe reveal its ways to you, reveal its methods to you. Because when you commit to a direction, things just seem to open up. Think about this. If you decide to buy a certain type of car, what happens after you buy that car? You notice all the other cars just like yours that are already on the road. You probably didn't notice those cars before you bought your car. But I think our antenna starts to attract and magnetize those things that we're already thinking about. So I would say start before you think you're ready. In fact, I went full-time in my business before I thought I was ready. And that happened because I lost my part-time job. We're still friends. The guy I work for and I are still very good friends. He supports all my book launches by buying multiple copies of my books for his real estate insurance or his real estate team. He doesn't do insurance, he does real estate. And anytime I come out with something new, he buys it, and he's a tremendous supporter. The issue was that he wanted me to work more hours to help him in his business. And I kept saying, I can't. And he knew I was growing my business on the side. And I think he finally realized I was more interested in growing my business than helping him grow his. And there's nothing wrong with that, but he respected that. But he says, I really need someone who can be here full time. So we have to part ways. And I said, that's fine. And this happened on a Friday. And over the weekend, I thought, I'm free. I can finally do what I want. But when Monday came and I didn't have anywhere to go, I thought, oh, what just happened here? That's when it got real. So you want to be the master of your own fate. Start before you think you can. And if that means starting your business as a side hustle first, like I did, please do that first. Don't just quit cold turkey. I've done that too. I've quit jobs cold turkey with the idea of starting a business, but didn't take into account that there's a learning curve. There's a growing period that has to take place first. You have to have a foundation in place first. If you don't set that foundation first before you start, you're going to fall flat on your face. Imagine trying to build a house without having a foundation first. It'll crumble. It'll sink. It'll fall apart. And then what do you have? A very expensive mess that you have to clean up later. So do that. Start before you think you're ready.
Love that. It's such a powerful message. It's simple, but it's also very powerful. I love simplicity. I like to say simple is brilliant, but it's really powerful what you're sharing. Start before you're ready. Now, whether you call that, move into the tipping point, like you said, start your side gig and move into the tipping point. Or if it's just a project that is enormous, like I'm just pull something out of the air here, like starting a website and just start, build a page or something. No matter what it is, start before you're ready. You're not ready to build a full-fledged website, or if you're not ready to start a full-fledged entrepreneurial business that has 100 employees, right? There's a little learning curve. What I also love that you shared is about the foundation. I think that escapes a lot of people, Brian. Would you be inclined to agree with that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. People see the result of what you're doing, but they don't always pay attention to what had to happen behind the scenes first. You think about this. Think about someone who's a great cook, cooks very, very well. Maybe they're a chef, and people say, you should start your own restaurant. Well, the chef starts a restaurant, then doesn't realize until it's too late what all was involved. So the skill set behind cooking is not the same skill set required to run an actual restaurant or an actual business. So be very careful about that. Know that there are differences between operating in the scope of a job and operating a business. The skill sets are very, very different.
You're speaking in my soul right now.
Good.
Brian, I mean it. This is such a powerful conversation. I go back to books where Michael Gerber said originally, like, technicians don't make entrepreneurs necessarily. And so I hear that that glimmer of that in your message.
Right. Exactly.
And it's very powerful advice, but I love how that you illustrated it with restaurants too, because I've seen a lot of that, as I imagine you have too. Mm-hmm. Talent doesn't necessarily make for a business, is what I hear you saying.
Right.
Powerful stuff, but don't let that hold you back. So the core of your message here is don't let that hold you back. Get started now, and then, then ease into it, if you will. That's the powerful message that I hear you sharing. Yes.
You can learn the stuff you don't know, and you can partner with people who know what you don't know, and hire a coach. So important.
There's no way I could agree with you more, Brian.
Good.
100%. Love it. So let me ask you this, if I might. Mm-hmm. For those people who are listening or watching right now and thinking, yeah, I've heard that before. Okay, get a coach, start before I'm ready. What would you say to somebody that doesn't yet resonate with, or they're not sure, they don't understand exactly what you're saying by that? Can you illustrate a little bit more, share an example of what that might look like for someone to get them off the fence?
Yeah.
To really deliver value.
It took me a while to feel like I was really ready. Mm-hmm. And so there were times where I would quit a job with the idea of starting my business, and then not really knowing where to go next. And then the money ran out, and so I had to go get a job again. And I was just in cycles of misery for a long, long time. But I think you have to reach a point where you're not saying I should, you're saying I must. It has to become a priority. It has to be the thing that drives you every single day. You have to have a strong reason why. If you don't know why you want to start a business, you're going to fail. If your reason for starting a business is to make a lot of money, that's nice, but what are you going to do with the money? What about those days where you just don't want to? Is that going to drive you? Is there a purpose behind it all? Are you looking to make somebody's life better? Are you looking to create a product or service that can change people's lives and improve their state of being? If you are looking just to make money, that's a very selfish reason to start a business. Now, there's nothing wrong with having money, because it gives you choices, it gives you freedom, but that cannot be the only thing that drives you.
Love it. I love it. Some deep, powerful.
People smell commission breath from miles away.
Right on, Brian. Mm-hmm. Powerful stuff. Purpose, know your why. That's the deep foundational stuff you were talking about, and now you just illustrated that. So I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
And so if you're listening and watching and that escaped you, I want to encourage you to just scroll back and re-listen to that, because he threw out a couple of questions that will get you started in that foundational work and start to answer those questions that he just tossed right off the tip of his tongue in order to serve you.
Yeah.
Brian, thank you so much. I know you and I could talk business for hours.
Of course.
Hours. I just already know this. But I'd like to switch gears, and I'm going to ask you a vacation question, because I believe that and I believe that you believe this too. Mm-hmm. We work to live, not live to work. We've already talked about freedom. What's the most fun vacation you've ever had?
Wow. Are we talking as an adult?
As you wish. It's your show.
Yeah. Well, family vacations were always fun growing up. Went to Disney World in Florida. And that was when my dad had a work-related trip. And so we were gone for about a week. And I was in high school, and we got to escape Iowa in February. That was awesome. And then years later, as an adult, we went back again because we were visiting my uncle, who now is living in Florida, and we spent Christmas week there. We went again. I looked at Disney World from a completely different perspective. I looked at it through the lens of an entrepreneur. everything had a purpose and a reason behind it. Everything was very well scripted. Everything was very orchestrated. And so that was really eye-opening for me. It's just realizing and just watching that in real time. They call their employees cast members. So it's like they're in a movie. That's their whole operation, is it's like an episode of a show or a movie. And so everyone has his purpose or her purpose, and everyone plays their part. And I was watching that. Another really fun trip that I had actually happened last year. I went to Jacksonville last summer for a friend's wedding. So I went there not knowing anyone. This is actually a friend that I had met on Facebook, and we talked a lot and have been on the phone a lot, but we had never met in person. So he invited me to his wedding without ever having met me in person, meeting me in person. And I went, and his friends and family were amazed that this guy that he had never met in person actually showed up for his wedding. And we had a great time. He met me at the airport. We spent the day before his wedding together. We spent like the whole afternoon together, and it was really fun. And I showed up and I stayed at a hotel about 1.5 miles away, and I walked to the beach, where the wedding was, and the reception, and had a great time. And I did a little work during this vacation because it's not work to me. I have a lot of fun, but I relaxed and I just enjoyed being away from Arizona, and it was fun.
Love it. Yeah. It's a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm.
As we say in Florida, well, I think this is an older statement. Come on down.
The Price is Right.
3. Yeah. I love that you shared 3 Florida stories. Go Florida.
Yeah.
That's great. I love it. It's fun here.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious. And in a moment, I'm going to frame up how people can reach out to you when they see this and watch this. But I want to go one place first, Brian. You're working on some amazing projects right now. And I know you shared the book earlier and some other things that you're working on and you have worked on. I'd like to know, like, specifically what campaigns you're driving toward right now, so that when somebody watches this or they hear it, there's a lot of people that don't know what a ghostwriter is, for example.
Yeah, right.
What kind of campaigns are you working on? What kind of pizzazz are you throwing out into the world right now, my friend?
Well, ghostwriter basically is someone who writes your book for you. You discuss all the content that you want in the book, and then the ghostwriter is the one who actually writes the book for you, basically in your voice, and just polishes it up and makes you sound brilliant like you actually are. So that's what I work on. Right now, like I mentioned, I'm working on a book series called The Greatest Lessons I Learned from Being an Entrepreneur. And The Greatest Lessons is a book series. I showed you The Greatest Lessons I Learned from my dad earlier. The Greatest Lessons I Learned from my mom is coming out soon. And The Greatest Lessons I Learned from Being an Entrepreneur is next. And that's being written now by my collaborators and myself. There will be more in the future, but I've got ideas for lots and lots of books in the future, not only for myself, but for my clients. I've got some clients who will be onboarding with me very shortly, and some clients who just finished. In fact, I had a client who went to #1 on Amazon last week. We had her launch last week. So that was really, really awesome. In fact, it was this book. It's called Build a Better Business, Work Smarter, Not Harder by Lori Wren. Get this, it's on Amazon. It went to #1. It's an amazing book. She's brilliant. So that's what I'm working on right now. And of course, I'm always working on Success Profiles Magazine. I always welcome people who want to contribute articles. So Brian at Brian K. Wright is where you can reach out to me in my email.
You beat me to it. We went straight to it. I love it. So that's the best way. When somebody listens and watches, that's the best way for them to reach out to you?
They can do that, or if they are really interested in the possibility of writing a book, they can go to writeabookforyou.com. That's spelled all the way out, writeabookforyou.com. They can see the scope of what I do. They can see testimonials. They can see a link to my segment on The List, which is a nationally syndicated TV show where I talk about 3 things you need to get started writing your book right now. At the very bottom, there's a link to get on my calendar.
I love it.
Yeah.
And how do they listen to your radio show?
Go to Apple Podcasts and look up Success Profiles Radio.
Wonderful. Brian, I really appreciate you being on. I know that you took a chunk out of your free time today to actually be on the show. So I appreciate that. And I celebrate you for that. I'm honest, you were being humble. So that's why I really wanted to dive in some of the cool projects that you're working on. Appreciate your humility as well as just the spirit of service of being here. So thank you very much.
Right. Thanks, Brad. It was fun being here.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. This is Brad A. Milford with the Unlimited Business Wisdom Podcast, where leaders, seasoned entrepreneurs, and business owners share their wisdom. If you're looking for more on leadership, sales, marketing, or operations to drive team development, higher quality, and high-level sustainable profits, we encourage you to join the Built for Brilliance community on Facebook or reach out to us about one of our mastermind groups, coaching or consulting, or even fractional COO services. You can reach us at buildbrilliance.net/contact. We thank you for listening, for sharing the show, and appreciate your rating and reviews, as this makes more shows possible. Thanks for joining us.